Hello, I'm Loui Lord Nelson, an author and educational consultant in the area of universal design for learning. For today's Essential Elements, I will share the topic of universal design for learning, known also as UDL. I'm going to talk about UDL via 5 questions. Who created it and why? What is included in the framework? How is it organized? What are some examples of how it's implemented? And what is the ultimate reason for UDL? UDL was created by a group of individuals who started the nonprofit CAST as a response to a need they saw. These individuals were a group of multidisciplinary diagnosticians at a children's hospital who worked with students who weren't successfully learning. The students came to them, and the team devised student-specific, digitally based, flexible options like digital books, a chin switch, and word processing programs. Now, these students could move past decoding and work on comprehension, demonstrate student-held knowledge previously unknown to others, and author stories and reports. But there was a problem with that model. The supports the team created weren't being used in the classrooms, nor were these supports made available to other students who might benefit from them as well. So this group of diagnosticians knew what they had to do to benefit all learners. They had to help educators design accessible and flexible learning environments. It's from this premise that the UDL framework grew. At its heart, UDL is a framework that guides the shift from designing learning environments and lessons with potential barriers to designing barrier-free, instructionally rich learning environments and lessons. This graphic lays out the major components of UDL. Before I talk through it, though, I want to share how these words ended up in this graphic. UDL is a collection of evidence-based research from the fields of education, special education, psychology, educational psychology, and neuropsychology. Plainly put, this is all the good stuff. This is the stuff research and practice tells us is helpful for all learners. That is why some of it will feel familiar to you. It's also the reason why there is so much from which you can choose. It's also worth emphasizing that all of the words and phrases you see on this graphic are directly influenced by findings in neuropsychology. Those are the scientists who look at the structure and function of our brains in relation to specific activities, like learning. Because those findings are woven throughout the graphic you see, UDL keeps us on the pathway of designing learning environments based on what we know our learners' brains need most. The 3 principles are the overarching organizers of UDL. These are engagement, representation, and action and expression. Why were these chosen as the organizers? It goes back to neuroscience. We know these 3 areas are crucial to learning. And though I'm going to describe these 3 networks as individual entities, they're not. Our brain is interconnected, which is why it's even more crucial we provide our learners with diverse learning environments designed using the UDL framework. The principle of engagement is linked to the affective networks. These networks focus on our emotion centers of our brain. As a society, we have mistakenly separated learning and emotion, seeing one as totally independent of the other. Our friends in neuroscience areas have helped us better understand that learning and emotion are unequivocally intertwined. For example, we now know that for better learning to take place, we have to feel good about learning. Our relationship with learning has to be positive. We also know that we all learn differently. So we need to give our learners a lot of different opportunities and ways to experience learning, reflect on how they felt about it, share their experiences, and hear from others about their experiences. When learners are in this type of environment, their understanding of what it means to be a strong learner widens, allowing room for their own experiences. They begin to see themselves as effective learners. The principle of representation links to the recognition networks. Our brains are always very busy identifying patterns, both simple and complex, which is how we make sense of things. Let's use the example of Big Bird from Sesame Street. A major cultural icon from American TV since the early 1970s, most are familiar with the image of Big Bird. Even though Big Bird isn't an exact replica of a bird in the wild, we recall that he is a bird. We might even start thinking about other birds. Maybe we think of other yellow birds like the American goldfinch or other big birds like the ostrich. The recognition networks have put all of this together over time, and without missing a beat, we move forward with a mental image of Big Bird and our comprehension of that character and possibly birds in general. How information is presented to learners can either limit or expand opportunities, though. Using the Big Bird example, that character could be an entrance to talking about other yellow birds or big birds. That character could be a way to pave that pathway to understanding, but only if the students have been exposed to him. If they never watched the show Sesame Street or played with the Big Bird toy, the cartoon character would not have the meaning to them. The principle of representation and the recognition networks remind us that all knowledge is built from background knowledge. So we need to either support our students to either gain new knowledge, for example, explain who Big Bird is, or finding another example that helps them move forward. The principle of action and expression links to the strategic networks. These networks help us plan actions, execute those actions, and monitor those actions. These networks are part of everything we do. Though it's likely second nature, you use your strategic networks for the process of brushing your teeth. You make a decision to brush them, but you know you need to have a toothbrush and toothpaste, and most of us like to have some water involved. Next, we have to put the toothpaste on the brush and go through the movements. Then we monitor our actions. Do you brush for the recommended 2 minutes? Do you look at your teeth in the mirror when you're done? Do you get to work sometimes and realize you forgot to brush your teeth? You've used your strategic networks through that entire process. What about when you were learning to brush your teeth? Did someone just tell you how to do it and then you successfully brushed your teeth? Did you listen to someone brushing their teeth and figure it out? Did you figure it out on your own with a toothbrush and toothpaste in hand? You were likely endlessly prompted, helped to figure out what you needed for the task, and then you were asked if you brushed your teeth and for how long. Pediatric dentists want children to see, hear about, and experience toothbrushing multiple times per day to gain quality oral hygiene skills. Whether they know it or not, dentists value our strategic networks and how they help us plan, execute, and monitor our actions. Beyond planning, executing, and monitoring our actions, the principle of action and expression also tells us that our students need opportunities to share what they know in a variety of ways, so beyond just brushing their teeth. That means exploring a variety of ways for them to share their skill or knowledge. Sometimes we individualize. Think back to the chin switch I referred to at the beginning. But what we're also talking about is making sure all learners have access to a variety of tools and resources so they can show understanding, and providing them structures that lead them to build their executive functioning skills like those discussed in the toothbrushing example. This overview of the 3 networks and the principles has been very brief, and of course there's much more to learn. But this description of the principles and brain networks is a lot, which is why CAST created this graphic and gave us more detailed information to break down the principles. Under each principle are the guidelines. These break each principle into 3 major pieces to help focus the design process. The checkpoints further clarify the guidelines. For example, you want to make sure you have options for self-regulation embedded into your learning environment. Maybe some students use personal checklists to help them stay on task, while others have prompts that remind them to check with 2 other classmates before asking the teacher a procedural question. Another example might be posting and clarifying expectations, but in a way that motivates students rather than constricts them. For example, remember to speak with level 2 voices when working in groups, rather than, "Keep it down or your name will go on the board." Which statement do you think would be more motivating? I have an image in my head of the UDL graphic lying flat with layers and layers of strategies underneath it, stemming from each guideline and checkpoint. That's because there are so many ways you can bring the framework to life. That's what makes the framework exciting and freeing to some, and somewhat overwhelming to others. This is why I've always said, start small. What do I mean by that? Let me show you some examples from classrooms all around the world and the first steps these teachers took. This teacher became very interested in the principle of engagement and wanted her learners to become more connected to their learning. She placed key vocabulary words next to the subject. At the end of each lesson, the students placed their picture where they believed they were in learning. She didn't leave it there, though. She had brief conversations with the students throughout the day about their decisions. Students gained skills in articulating where they saw themselves as learners, how to ask for help, and how to clarify their own learning journey. They also gained pride in seeing themselves as individual learners who were all moving forward just at their own pace, and that was okay. This teacher decided to focus on representation. She asked herself what other ways her students could become proficient with WH questions. While the students had been working on these words for a while, doing the customary matching worksheets and writing out the words, the teacher decided to write out several examples and designated time each day of that unit where the students interviewed each other using the WH questions they chose and then shared what they found out. They not only read the words, they spoke them and used them within an appropriate context. This teacher became very interested in her students improving their independent decision-making skills, so she focused on the principle of action and expression. This station is where students picked up resources as they needed them, selected their work, handed in their work, and checked out books, which is not seen in this particular picture. She checked in with her students about their choices, asking them to share why they chose different activities or tools. For example, the laptop versus markers and paper, or choosing an activity that was described as more challenging. They became more earnest with their decision-making, seeing how it made a difference in their learning. In all three cases, the teachers eased into these changes and they told their students 4 things: what they wanted to do and why, that the students would be making more choices, what results they were hoping to see, and they gave the students clear expectations. Why would you want to delve into this framework? Because when you build in options from all of the different guidelines into your learning environment so learners are interacting and making choices within that framework, they have the opportunity to move toward becoming an expert learner. What are expert learners? These are learners who are purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, and goal-directed. These are skill sets every student needs and every student can acquire, period. It does not matter what research you read, all evidence-based research from all of the different areas of education will state that all students should and can demonstrate the qualities of an expert learner. But we have to design learning environments that provide those opportunities, which is done via the UDL framework. The sources used for this presentation were Universal Design for Learning, Theory and Practice, put out by CAST Publishing. Second is Design and Deliver, Planning and Teaching Using Universal Design for Learning, which was published by Paul H. Brooks Publishing. Other resources include cast.org and castpublishing.org. Finally, the UDL chat is the first and third Wednesday on Twitter at 9 p.m. Eastern. You don't have to participate. You can just read the tweets as they come in. Just search for hashtag UDL chat anytime and you'll see a number of tweets. To see past chats, you can create a free account with storify.com and search using hashtag UDL chat. Recognizing that UDL can feel big, start small. Choose one focus within the framework. Choose one focus within your practice. Enlist the involvement of other teachers and talk with each other about your experiences. Trade suggestions, share successes, watch for change. Thank you.